Hello everyone, welcome to Inconvenient Truths. I'm your host, Jennifer Zeng. Today, first of all, I'll give a very brief discussion regarding the latest development in Afghanistan. Then following what I talked about last time about the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP's mandate in its misinformation war against the US and its allies, I will talk about the CCP's mandate inside China towards all sorts of industries. Why is the CCP killing Chinese businesses too? I will discuss these questions. So first of all, let's see a few photos. Yes, so these few pictures were taken on July 28th when Taliban leaders met with the CCP's Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Wang Yi said during that meeting that the Taliban is a key political and military force in Afghanistan and is expected to play an important role in the process of peace, reconciliation, and reconstruction. Then you know what has been happening in the past few days, right? It was reported that at least 7 people died as thousands rushed to flee the Taliban. Early this morning, before the US government held its press conference to talk about the situation in Afghanistan, the CCP was very quick to come out to say that it respects the will and choice of the Afghan people. And my comment was, the CCP is Taliban's best friend. The CCP's mouthpiece Global Times was also very quick in responding by saying that from what happened in Afghanistan, those in Taiwan should perceive that once a war breaks out in the streets, the island's defense will collapse in hours and the US military won't come to help. As a result, the DPP will quickly surrender. The DPP means Democratic Progressive Party in Taiwan, which is the ruling party right now. Shortly after that, the Global Times tweeted, "The fall of Kabul rings the funeral bell for US hegemony. If the US decides to launch military actions elsewhere with the excuse of democracy, human rights, and rules-based order, very few countries would keep following it." All these tweets, which you can see as representing the CCP's official stance regarding the latest development in Afghanistan, were posted faster and quicker than the US government's official response. And this is my first tweet about Afghanistan yesterday when I learned what was happening. Actually, it has been less than 20 days since the Taliban leaders met with the CCP's Foreign Minister Wang Yi in China. What I want to say briefly here is there is no coincidence in the world. Every time when the CCP faces some life-threatening event, something will happen in the world to divert the attention and to ease the pressure on the CCP. 20 years ago, right before 9/11 happened, the US was planning to move US strategic weapons, naval and air forces eastward, including to Guam and Pearl Harbor, which was clearly aimed at the CCP. Then 9/11 changed everything. In order to fight terrorism, the US decided to work with the CCP. After that, the CCP gained 20 years of time to develop its economy and quickly became the #1 country in the world. This time, less than 20 days after the Taliban leaders met with the CCP leaders in China, and right before the US was going to release its investigation result on the origin of the CCP virus or the COVID-19, the Taliban took back Afghanistan. What a good timing is it, right? The CCP has openly shown its support for the Taliban in a very high-profile way. So what else do you expect? They all belong to the same terrorist family. Just like this tweet says, they successfully shocked the world in 18 days. Okay, that's my brief comment on the situation in Afghanistan. Now, let's move to our next topic, the drunken boxing of the CCP inside China. Since this month, the CCP official media suddenly started a media campaign against all sorts of businesses and circles. As a result, sometimes companies lose billions in market value within one day, and only because the CCP's one article. People were totally at a loss as to what the CCP was doing. Some say that the CCP is playing drunken boxing or drunken-style kung fu, that nobody understands. Let me give you a few examples of what the CCP has been doing. On August 2nd, the CCP's mouthpiece China Central TV did a news piece saying that the CCP authorities are cracking down on banned fan culture chaos in the entertainment industry and had deleted over 150,000 negative and harmful posts, suspended over 4,000 accounts, and closed over 1,300 problematic chat groups. These post accounts and chat groups are mainly involved in celebrity lists, hot trending topics, fan communities, interactive comments, etc. The CCP says it is wrong to overly pursue commercial interests, to promote excessive entertainment, and to promote distorted idol culture, etc. Then on August 6, the CCP's other most important mouthpiece, People's Daily, published an article titled, "To manage and rectify banned fan culture, we must strengthen the management of website platforms." As a result, the share price of many entertainment companies and online video sharing platforms started to drop dramatically. Let's show picture 3. So this is the share price of a short video sharing app called Kuaishou. You can see that its share price has dropped for more than half since May and had a very big drop on August 4th, right after the CCTV news was aired. On August 3rd, a newspaper belonging to Xinhua published an article saying that online games are spiritual opium and have a lot of harm, so they should be regulated as soon as possible. Immediately after that, the share prices of several industry giants dropped sharply. Let's show picture 4. So this is the share price of Tencent on Hong Kong Stock Exchange. This next picture, this is the share price of NetEase on Hong Kong stock market as well. And the next, picture 6, this is the price of Bilibili and Nasdaq. On August 5th, Security Times belonging to the CCP's People's Daily published an article and said that the government shouldn't give tax incentives to the gaming industry, so the video game industry as a whole suffered great losses. On August 4th, the CCP's Ministry of Science published an article saying that research shows that some cancers are related to liquor consumption. Immediately, the share prices of all the liquor companies in China dropped. It doesn't matter if you don't understand the Chinese characters in the first column on the left. These are the names of these companies. The second column are the percentages of the decrease in the prices. You can see the top one has dropped 6.59%. The bottom one has dropped 3%. All have dropped. Then on August 10th, the CCP's Discipline Inspection Commission published an article to criticize the so-called liquor culture, which means forcing people to drink liquor when having a banquet. It is indeed that in CCP's China, when you want to have a business deal, you need to entertain your customers or CCP leaders. And if you don't drink enough liquor together with them, they won't think you are sincere enough and won't give you the business. This is a long existing problem, but why did the CCP suddenly start to talk about it now? Because a female employee of Alibaba claimed that she was forced to drink a lot of alcohol and then raped by an Alibaba senior manager. The problem is, in CCP's China, if the CCP wants to cover up something, this kind of negative news cannot survive on social media at all. But now, this accusation of this female employee of Alibaba can be allowed to be spread on the internet, and that CCP's Discipline Inspection Commission came out to speak for her because the big climate has changed. The CCP is now cracking down on Alibaba. So, because of this article, the share prices of liquor companies plunged furthermore. And then 2 men in Alibaba were detained on Saturday, that's August 14th, on suspicion of sexual assault. So this was the latest development of this matter. Then on August 4th, CCP's mouthpiece Xinhua published an article and warned against the possibility of electronic cigarettes being bought and consumed by minors. Immediately, the share price of an e-vapor producer called RLX plunged as much as 41% before the trading even started on the following day. Please note that this company is listed at the New York Stock Exchange, so American investors also suffered great losses. There are many other similar articles and cases. The industries targeted include health products, formulated milk powders, even chip industry, which was once listed by the CCP as an important industry to develop. So people say the CCP is now eliminating one industry per day with one article, and everyone in the market is scared and doesn't know what the CCP really wants to do and to achieve. This kind of drunken boxing or drunken style kung fu really confuses people. Why is the CCP doing so? Here is one of the theories. According to Dr. Chen Xiaolong, who is a scholar on China politics and economy, the CCP is doing this to reduce its dependence on the US. He said that the CCP was not playing some kind of meaningless or purposeless drunken boxing. On the contrary, the CCP is reconstructing its economy to move away from the virtual and financial economy to the real economy, to reduce its dependence on the US so that it can preserve in the long run in this battle against the United States. This is a major strategic reconstructing. So if you look at the industries that are cracked down on by the CCP, they are basically all service companies in the tertiary sector. On the surface, the CCP seems to be playing purposely drunken boxing, but in reality, it wants to conceal its true purpose. Chen Xiaolong said most of the industries that the CCP is cracking down on are from the service industry or companies that produce goods to meet certain special needs. They are not important to the CCP's strategic economy goals, therefore are unnecessary. Another purpose is that the CCP wants to squeeze young people from the service industry into the manufacturing industry. Right now, young people are not interested in manufacturing jobs, especially those from small and medium-sized towns and rural areas. Unlike their parents, the younger generations does not want to be restricted by the strict constraints of factory management and would rather work as a delivery boy than in a factory. Therefore, Meituan Group, which operates the food delivery business, now employs 10 million delivery boys. The off-campus training industries also have over 10 million college graduates working in them. By the way, the off-campus training industry was also severely cracked down by the CCP. That is another very big topic. Maybe we need to talk about it later and another time. While those so-called service industries are hiring a lot of young people, manufacturing factories in China are having problems recruiting young workers. In 2020, the total number of migrant workers in China is 286 million, of which about 26% are over 50 years old. The number of migrant workers in manufacturing had peaked in 2016 and are about 88 million and then dropped to 78 million by 2020, already down by 10 million, and will continue to decline because about 75.4 million of the 886 million migrant workers will return to their hometowns by 2025. The total number of migrant workers will drop to 266 million in 2020, a decrease of 20 million. Because of this, the CCP's economic overhaul is an attempt to change the employment preferences of the younger generation of the workforce, hoping to make them leave the food delivery and out-of-school training industries and to force them to move to manufacturing factories. Chen Xiaonong said another bigger strategic goal of the CCP is to reduce its dependence on the U.S. in economy. Over the past 20 years, the CCP has benefited a lot from its cooperation with the U.S., but it has also developed an economic dependency on the U.S. in technological market and foreign exchange areas. It depends on the theft of all import from the U.S. in technological areas. It depends on dumping its goods to the U.S. market and depends on the U.S. in investment to develop its economy. However, since President Trump started the trade talks with the CCP in 2018, it became harder and harder for the CCP to continue its reliance on the U.S., although it had been hoping to go back to Obama's time when the CCP could rely on the U.S. to develop its economy. In recent months, especially since the U.S. started to talk about investigating the origin of the CCP virus or COVID-19, the CCP felt it was more and more impossible to go back to Obama's time. So it is now preparing to reduce its economic dependence on the U.S. Or maybe we can also say that the CCP is seeking to decouple with the U.S., just as some people in the U.S. are talking about decoupling with the CCP. Chen Xiaolong said the CCP's current approach shows that in order to reduce its economic dependency on the U.S., it doesn't care whether what it does will hurt the U.S. investors or not. That is why it cracked down on Didi, an Uber-like ride-sharing app, as soon as Didi went public in the U.S. Actually, since the crackdown on Didi last month, the market value of Chinese companies listed in the U.S. has evaporated more than $400 billion. This has greatly shaken the confidence of Wall Street and U.S. investors. But the CCP doesn't care because it is preparing for the next step. Its goal is big, and it wants to hide its goal as long as it can. So that's why this time it is doing without saying anything. Well, that's one of the theories. Believe it or not, please spread this message as widely as you can. I think the US investors, decision makers, politicians, China watchers, and businesses all need to know that the latest big events that are happening in China to make right decisions related to the CCP in the future. Okay, that's all I plan to say today. Now let's see if there are any questions or comments. Wow, I right have to say Delta Saki donated $10. Thank you so much. The CCP, so Gina Maldaka says the CCP is evil and everyone in the US needs to stop buying all China products. Yes, I think if every consumers in the US can boycott CCP products, that will give them a big blow. Fab B says with numbers it's a little bit chaotic with, yes. I'm very bad at about the numbers in English. When I think about the numbers, I always think in English. Oh, in Chinese, thank you, sorry. Okay, seems we don't have other questions. Oh, Gina Medoc just donated $5. Brian Alshia said, will China make a move in the near future on Taiwan, in your opinion? I think probably not in the very near future, because next year Xi Jinping needs to seek a third term in its next National Congress of the CCP. And there was actually another big news recently saying that the CCP's military is very angry about what the CCP's foreign ministry has been doing with their very war-warrant stance. They are, making troubles everywhere, and the military basically said, if you make all the troubles for us, we are not going to back up for you. So maybe the military people knew their true, I think, strength, or their true status of whether they have the ability to invade Taiwan or not. But the possibility and the threat can always be there, and it all depends on, I think, like what I said in my lecture in Florida, it also depends on how the US, I think, respond and show its stance about its intention or its determination to defend Taiwan. If the CCP thinks there's little possibility that they can win this battle, maybe they will be more careful or think harder before they actually do something. So Gina Maltic said, thank you, Jennifer Zeng. I shared this with several groups I belong to. Thank you so much. So Data Saki said, is it possible that you can confront foreigners who are living in China? Yes, I think I did a one show about the foreign woman already. I think, yes, I'm very sad to say that as a Westerner who grew up in a democratic country would want to be, I think, on their own initiative to defend such an evil regime as CCP. I really felt it is a great shame. Okay, seems that's all we have for today. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Maybe we'll see you on Thursday. Thank you. Bye.